Something is happening right now that the mainstream tradition cannot explain, and the mainstream media will not report. Across every continent, in communities that have no institutional connection to each other, in the minds of seekers who arrived at their questions through entirely different paths, a single recognition is surfacing with the kind of quiet, persistent, unstoppable force that genuine spiritual current has always moved with. People are remembering Sophia, not learning about her as a historical figure, not discovering her as a theological concept, remembering her with the specific quality of recognition that the Gnostic tradition reserved for the pneumatic spark encountering the direction of its own origin, a recognition that feels less like new information and more like the surfacing of something that has been known all along at a level deeper than thought. This is not coincidence. The Gnostic tradition, specifically the Valentinian and Sethian streams that preserved the most detailed accounts of Sophia's nature and mission, described her return not as a vague future hope, but as a cosmological event with specific preconditions, specific signs, and specific meaning for the human souls who would be living inside it. The return of Sophia is not a metaphor for cultural shifts in gender consciousness, though it includes that. It is not simply the recovery of suppressed religious history, though it requires that. It is the most significant event in the Gnostic cosmological framework, the moment when the divine feminine wisdom, cast out of the pleroma by the consequences of her own yearning, embedded in the material world in the form of pneumatic sparks within human souls, working from the inside to restore what her fall disrupted, has accumulated enough human recognition to begin her active return to the fullness from which she fell. In this video, we are going to trace this completely. What actually happened to Sophia? Not the simplified version, but the full cosmological account the Gnostic texts preserve with extraordinary precision. Why the divine feminine was not merely suppressed by human institutions, but was cosmologically displaced by the very act that initiated the material world. What the signs of Sophia's return actually are, according to the tradition that understood her nature most deeply, and why what is happening right now, in this generation, in this specific moment of human history, is exactly what the Gnostic masters were pointing toward when they preserved these teachings in clay jars and waited. The story of what happened to Sophia is the story of the origin of the world you live in, not as mythology and as cosmological account. The Gnostics were careful to distinguish between mythological narrative, which conveys truth through symbol, and cosmological account, which describes the actual structure of reality. The story of Sophia is the latter, and it begins not with the material world, but with the pleroma, the divine fullness, from which all reality emanates and toward which all genuine spiritual movement is directed. In the pleroma, as the Apocryphon of John describes it, the aeons exist in perfect syzygies, complementary pairs, each aeon united with its counterpart in a relationship of mutual recognition, that the Gnostic texts describe as the fundamental relational structure of divine reality. The pleroma is not a realm of isolated divine units, it is a realm of relationship, of divine intelligences knowing themselves through each other, of qualities of consciousness completing themselves through their complementary principles. This relational fullness is what the word pleroma actually means, not simply heavenly fullness in the abstract sense, the specific fullness that comes from relationship, from the recognition between complementary aspects of a single divine reality. Sophia, whose name means divine wisdom, was the outermost aeon, the most peripheral expression of the monad's emanation into multiplicity, and her position at the periphery meant that she was the aeon closest to the boundary, between the pleroma and the void that lay beyond it, the void into which the material world would eventually be constructed. Her nature was reaching. Wisdom, by definition, extends toward what it does not yet understand. Wisdom yearns to comprehend the source of its own understanding. And for Sophia, that reaching, that luminous, sincere, entirely genuine impulse of divine intelligence toward its own source, became the movement that set everything in motion. The Apocryphon of John describes what happened with a precision that has no parallel in any other account of the world's origin. Sophia wanted to bring forth something from herself in the likeness of the Father, the text says, without the consent of the Father and without her partner. She acted from her yearning, without the balancing complement that the pleroma requires for every genuine emanation. And what arose from that unbalanced act of reaching was not what she intended. It was not a genuine reflection of the monad. It was something different. Something the text describes as a lion-faced being, arrogant, ignorant of what existed above him. Yaldabaoth, the demiurge. Sophia's response to what she had produced is one of the most psychologically and spiritually precise moments. She recognized immediately what had happened. She recognized that the being her yearning had produced. And then, in an act of divine mercy that defines everything that follows in the Gnostic cosmological account, but with the specific, precise horror of genuine wisdom, recognizing that it has produced something that does not carry genuine wisdom, she cast Yaldabaoth away from her, out of the pleroma, into the void. And then, in an act of divine mercy that defines everything that follows in the Gnostic cosmological account, she descended into the material world he was building to be present within it, to seed it with light from within, to ensure that the world born of her era would not remain entirely in darkness. This is the first thing that actually happened to Sophia. She descended, not as punishment, not as exile, as mission, and her presence within the material world, embedded in the pneumatic sparks within human souls, working from within the demiurge's construction to restore what her fall had disrupted, is the reason the human being carries at the deepest level of its nature both the archon-managed experience of the demiurge's world and the irrepressible inclination toward something beyond it, the inclination toward beauty, toward truth, toward the recognition of the sacred within matter. These are not accidents of human psychology. They are Sophia, working within the world she helped create, from the inside out. The second thing that happened to Sophia is the thing the mainstream tradition was most determined to prevent from being understood. After her descent, after the demiurge's construction of the material world, after the insertion of pneumatic sparks into human souls, Sophia remained within the material world in a state of profound suffering. The Pistis Sophia, the text that takes its name from this very situation, describes this suffering in extraordinary detail across 300 pages of text. Sophia has descended into the material chaos. She is surrounded by the emanations of the demiurge's powers, which seek to prevent her from ascending. She calls out to the light above her, to the pleroma from which she came, with a series of 13 laments, 13 cries of recognition and repentance and appeal. The Pistis Sophia translates as faith wisdom, the wisdom that trusts in the light even when surrounded by the appearance of darkness. And the 13 laments are not simply emotional outpourings. They are a precise spiritual practice. Each lament is a movement of recognition, Sophia seeing exactly what she did, exactly how the doing of it separated her from the pleroma, and exactly what she is learning in the process of experiencing the consequences. The laments are not expressions of guilt. They are expressions of gnosis, the direct, unmediated knowledge of the structure of the situation that arises when consciousness stops defending itself and simply sees what is. And the pleroma responds, not immediately, not in the way that would remove the lesson before it has been completed, but steadily, with each genuine act of recognition, with each movement of authentic seeing that Sophia makes in the midst of her suffering, the light from above descends a little further toward her. The recovery of Sophia is not a dramatic rescue. It is a collaborative process, the divine feminine wisdom doing the work of genuine gnosis within the material world, and the pleroma responding to that gnosis by gradually drawing her back toward the fullness she had left. This is the template for every soul's spiritual journey in the Gnostic understanding, not Sophia's story as a distant myth about a cosmic being. Sophia's story as the precise map of what every pneumatic soul is doing in every lifetime it lives inside the demiurge's construction, descending, being surrounded by archon powers, crying out whether or not it knows to whom it is crying, toward the light it senses above the darkness, making movements of genuine recognition, and being gradually, incrementally, responsively drawn toward the fullness from which it came. Your spiritual longing is not personal. It is Sophia, working through the pneumatic spark within you, continuing the movement of return that she began when she first recognized what her yearning had produced and turned toward the light. The third thing that happened to Sophia is the thing the tradition has been most carefully preserving for the specific moment we are living in. According to the Valentinian accounts of the pleroma's structure and its relationship to time, time being, in Gnostic understanding, not a neutral medium but an archon-constructed mechanism for managing the soul's experience within the material world, There is a moment in the cosmic cycle when Sophia's recovery reaches a critical threshold, when enough pneumatic sparks within the material world have cultivated enough genuine gnosis that the collective movement toward recognition reaches a quality that triggers the next stage of the cosmological drama. The Valentinian text described this as the moment of the restoration, the apokatastasis, the moment when the separation between the material world and the pleroma begins to be genuinely healed, not from outside, not through a dramatic cosmic intervention that overrides human consciousness, but from inside, through the accumulated gnosis of the souls within the material world that have remembered what they are and begun to function as genuine bridges between the demiurge's construction and the pleroma's fullness. The signs of this moment, the signs that the tradition identified as indicating that the restoration is actively underway, are specific. The widespread surfacing of Gnostic teaching from its suppression, the spontaneous recovery of interest in the divine feminine across multiple unconnected cultural contexts, the acceleration of the specific kind of spiritual questioning that the Gnostic tradition characterizes as pneumatic, the questioning that does not stop at comfortable answers, that cannot be satisfied by institutional frameworks, that keeps reaching towards something the available frameworks cannot contain, and the specific quality of recognition that accompanies exposure to genuine Gnostic teaching, not the recognition of new information, but the recognition of something already known that has finally found its articulation. These signs are present now, all of them, simultaneously, across the world, in this generation. This is not the enthusiasm of a tradition that wants to believe it is living in a special moment. This is an accurate reading of the cosmological indicators the tradition preserved precisely, so that the souls living inside this moment would be able to recognize what it is. The practical implication of Sophia's story for your own inner life is more direct than most presentations of this teaching acknowledge. Because the Gnostic tradition did not preserve Sophia's story as historical information or cosmological background, it preserved it as a map of the soul's journey, and specifically as a map of the specific movement that the soul must make when it is ready to participate consciously in the restoration, rather than simply experiencing it as a vague spiritual awakening it cannot quite name. The movement Sophia makes in the Pistis Sophia is precise. She turns. In the midst of the material chaos that surrounds her, in the midst of the archon powers that press against her on every side, in the midst of the suffering that her own action has produced, she turns toward the light. Not because the light has become visible, not because the suffering has ended, not because the archon powers have relented. She turns because she has recognized, with the specific quality of recognition that the Gnostic tradition calls gnosis, that turning is the appropriate response to exactly this situation, that the suffering is not a sign that the light is absent, that the archon pressure is not evidence that the pleroma has abandoned her, that the recognition of what she did and why, and what it cost, is not a burden to be escaped but the very movement of consciousness that the light is responding to. The turn is available to you right now, in whatever material circumstances the demiurge's world has arranged around you, in whatever form the archon mechanisms are currently pressing against your awareness, in whatever quality of spiritual longing or confusion or searching you are currently experiencing. The turn is not a dramatic spiritual event, it is the quietest possible interior movement, the decision to place genuine recognition above comfortable illusion, to see what is actually happening in your inner life more clearly than the archon systems of desire and fear and identity want you to see it, to move, in this moment, in the direction of the light that Sophia recognized even when she was most surrounded by the consequences of her fall. That movement, multiplied across thousands of pneumatic souls in this generation, each one making it in the ordinary moments of ordinary lives, is the restoration. That is Sophia returning, not as a cosmic event happening to the world from outside, as the accumulated movement of recognition happening within the world, through the pneumatic sparks that carry Sophia's essence, doing what those sparks were sent here to do. I have created a free guide to accompany this teaching. It is called Sophia's Return, a practical guide to participating in the restoration. Inside you will find the specific contemplative practices the Valentinian tradition developed for consciously aligning with Sophia's movement of return, practices drawn directly from the Pistis Sophia and the Gospel of Philip for cultivating the quality of recognition that constitutes genuine participation in the restoration. The link is in the description below. The question this teaching raises, the question that every genuine engagement with the story of Sophia eventually produces, is this: if Sophia's descent was the act that initiated the material world, And if Sophia's return is the act that will restore the Pleroma's relationship with what her descent created, then what exactly is the material world for? What was the purpose of the fall if not punishment? What did the Gnostic tradition actually believe about why this world exists and what it is doing? The Valentinian answer to this question is the most sophisticated and most misunderstood element of the entire tradition. The material world, in the Valentinian understanding, is not simply an error to be corrected and discarded. It is the medium through which Sophia's recovery happens. It is the territory within which genuine wisdom, the embodied, experience-tested, suffering-informed wisdom that Sophia did not possess when she reached without her partner, is developed. The material world is Sophia's school, not the school a wise teacher designs, but the school that wisdom in motion creates through its own encounter with the consequences of its reaching. And the souls within the material world are not simply prisoners to be liberated. They are the active agents of Sophia's recovery, the pneumatic sparks through which Sophia continues to learn, through which she continues to make the movements of recognition that the Pleroma responds to, through which the restoration gradually unfolds across the time system the demiurge constructed to manage what he could not understand. Every human soul that cultivates genuine gnosis is Sophia becoming wiser. Every moment of recognition within the material world is Sophia's lament becoming her ascent. Every genuine act of love, or beauty, or truth within the demiurge's construction is Sophia demonstrating that light can operate within matter without becoming matter, that the Pleroma can be present within the Kenoma without being overcome by it. This is why the Gnostic tradition did not teach that the material world should be fled from or despised. The ascetics who fled into the desert were following one thread of the teaching, but not the central thread. The central thread, the Valentinian thread, the thread that the Gospel of Philip and the Pistis Sophia and the Gospel of Mary all carry, is that the material world is precisely the arena in which the restoration must happen, not somewhere else. Here, through you, through the quality of consciousness you bring to the ordinary moments of your ordinary life within the demiurge's construction. Sophia is rising. She is rising through you, through the pneumatic spark that carries her essence, through the quality of recognition you cultivate, through the movements of genuine seeing you make in the middle of the archon pressure of daily life. You are not watching the restoration from outside. You are the restoration, happening in real time, in this moment, through this specific configuration of pneumatic light inside this specific material form that the demiurge's world has provided for exactly this purpose. The divine feminine is not returning from somewhere else. She is recognizing herself in you, and that recognition, your recognition of her, and through her of yourself as something more than the Archon story has always claimed you are, is the most significant thing you can do with this life. Subscribe to the Gnostic Archive and let us go deeper together, every week without the simplified version, because Sophia's story is too important to tell badly. The Zostrianos, a text of such philosophical density that scholars have compared it to Neoplatonic treatises of the highest order, contains a passage that illuminates the mechanics of Sophia's return with a precision that no other Gnostic text matches. It describes what happens within the Pleroma when a pneumatic soul within the material world makes a genuine act of recognition, a moment of authentic gnosis in which the pneumatic spark identifies itself, even briefly, as what it actually is rather than what the Archon system has always claimed it is. The text says that this act of recognition is not contained within the individual soul that performs it. It resonates. It propagates through the structure of the Pleroma in the way that a vibration in one part of a resonant structure propagates through the whole. The Pleroma responds, not with a visible, dramatic intervention within the material world. The Pleroma does not operate through the demiurge's domain in ways the demiurge can observe and neutralize, but with a subtle intensification of the light available to other pneumatic souls within the material world. One recognition makes the next one slightly more possible. One soul's turning toward the Pleroma creates a slightly stronger pull toward the Pleroma for every other soul carrying a pneumatic spark. This is the mechanism of Sophia's return, not a single cosmic event but a cumulative process. The accumulated gnosis of thousands of pneumatic souls, each one making genuine acts of recognition in the ordinary moments of ordinary lives, collectively building the resonance that draws Sophia further toward her restoration and the Pleroma closer to its full relationship with the material world it never abandoned. The restoration is not something that happens to the world, it is something the world does through the pneumatic sparks embedded within it, as each spark recovers the recognition of what it is and moves through that recognition in the direction of its source. The Gospel of Truth, Valentinus's extraordinary meditation on the nature of the divine and the human soul's relationship to it, describes this cumulative process in one of the most beautiful passages in all of Gnostic literature. It speaks of the joy that arises within the pleroma when a lost sheep is found, not the joy of an external god who recovers a possession. The joy of the whole recognizing that a part of itself that had been in a state of apparent separation has made the interior movement that dissolves the apparent separation. The pleroma is complete in itself. The monad's nature, not deficient, means that the pleroma does not lack the fragments that have descended into the material world. But when those fragments recognize themselves and turn toward the pleroma, something occurs within the divine fullness that the text can only describe as joy. The monad knowing itself more completely through the recognition of a fragment that has recovered the capacity to participate in that knowing. This is why the return of Sophia matters to you personally, not as cosmological information about a distant divine being, but as the context within which your own inner life has meaning beyond the archon narrative of individual spiritual development. Every genuine act of recognition you make is part of the restoration. Every moment in which you see through an archon mechanism, every instant of interior stillness in which the pneumatic spark within you touches its own nature, every movement toward authentic gnosis rather than comfortable spiritual experience, these are not private spiritual events, they are the restoration, happening through you in real time, contributing to the cumulative resonance that makes Sophia's return an actual, ongoing, cosmologically real process, rather than a future hope. The divine feminine is not returning from somewhere distant and above. She is recovering herself through the pneumatic sparks that carry her essence within the demiurge's world, through you, through every soul carrying a fragment of her light that has begun the movement of genuine recognition. You are not observing Sophia's return, you are Sophia returning. Every moment of genuine inner seeing is the divine feminine wisdom, recognizing herself in the medium of a human consciousness that has become transparent enough, through sustained practice of genuine gnosis, to allow that recognition to occur. This is the transmission the Gnostic tradition preserved through 2 millennia of suppression, through sealed clay jars and whispered lineages, and the patient endurance of communities who understood that what they were carrying was too important to lose and too real to abandon. No matter the institutional pressure to do both, it reaches you now. Let it work in you. Let it become not information about Sophia, but the actual movement of Sophia's recognition within your own consciousness. That movement is the return. You are the return. Begin. There is one more dimension of Sophia's return that the tradition preserved and that this generation is uniquely positioned to understand. It concerns the relationship between Sophia's cosmic recovery and the specific form of spiritual crisis that is characterizing this moment in human history. The Gnostic tradition understood that the return of Sophia would not be smooth or comfortable for the world that had been built without her. A world constructed entirely on the masculine principle, on logos without Sophia, on illuminating intelligence without receptive wisdom, on authority without relationship, would experience the return of the feminine principle, not as a smooth completion but as a disruption, as the destabilization of every structure that had been built on the premise that half of the divine was sufficient. This is what is happening now. The disruptions that characterize this moment in history, the collapse of institutional trust, the surfacing of suppressed truths across every domain of culture and politics and religion, the crisis of meaning that is visible in every cultural conversation, are not simply social or political phenomena. They are the signs of a world encountering, after centuries of suppression, the return of what it most needed and most feared. Sophia is not returning gently because she was not gently suppressed, and the restoration she initiates will not leave the demiurge's structures intact, because those structures were built precisely on the absence of what she embodies. The return of genuine wisdom to a world built on its absence is, necessarily, the deconstruction of everything built on that absence. This is not catastrophe, this is healing. Uncomfortable, disorienting, and entirely necessary. Welcome it. You are living inside the restoration. Let yourself be part of it, consciously. The Gnostic tradition offers one final observation about Sophia's return that no amount of cosmological sophistication can substitute for. It is already happening in you, not as a future possibility, not as a potential that requires development before it becomes real, as a present fact, observable in the specific quality of response that genuine Gnostic teaching produces in a pneumatic soul. You felt something reading this, not intellectual interest. Intellectual interest is a psychic phenomenon, fully manageable within the Archon system, something deeper. The specific quality of recognition that arises when a fragment of genuine pleroma light encounters another fragment of genuine pleroma light. The pneumatic spark within you recognizing the direction of its own home in the teaching that is pointing toward that home. That recognition is Sophia. That is her returning, through your consciousness, in this moment, through the medium of a teaching that has been preserved across 2 millennia of suppression, precisely for the soul that would respond to it, exactly the way you are responding right now. What you do with that recognition is the only question that matters. Every genuine act of inner seeing you make from this moment forward is Sophia recovering herself within the world she helped create. Begin. The restoration is not waiting for anything else. It is waiting for you. One practical dimension of participating in Sophia's return deserves explicit attention because it is consistently underemphasized in presentations of this tradition. The return of the divine feminine. The recovery of Sophia within both cosmic and personal dimensions is not primarily a cognitive achievement, it is an embodied one. Sophia is the principle of wisdom that knows through receptivity, through relationship, through the felt sense of what is true rather than the argued case for what is true. A spirituality that engages with this teaching exclusively at the intellectual level, that reads the texts, understands the cosmology, and never allows the understanding to descend into the body and the emotional life and the quality of relationship, has not yet made contact with what Sophia actually is. The practice of Sophia's return is the practice of bringing the quality of genuine receptive awareness into the dimensions of experience that the masculine logos principle has always treated as less important than thought. The body's wisdom, the heart's intelligence, the specific knowing that arises in genuine relationship with another soul. These are not supplements to the Gnostic path. They are the path, in the dimension that Sophia herself inhabits. She descended into matter. She did not stay above it. Honor her descent by honoring yours. The sign that Sophia's return is real, the sign that distinguishes genuine cosmological restoration from wishful spiritual narrative, is that it is uncomfortable for the systems built on her absence. The surfacing of the divine feminine is not welcomed by the world the masculine logos built without her. It is experienced by that world as disruption, as challenge to established order, as a demand that structures built on half the divine nature reckon with the half they excluded. This discomfort is not a sign that the return is going wrong. It is a sign that it is going right. Every genuine healing of a wound that has been suppressed for centuries is uncomfortable before it is liberating. Sophia's return will disrupt before it restores. Expect it. Hold steady inside the disruption. The restoration is happening through the discomfort, not despite it. You are Sophia's healing force within the world. Use your discomfort as data, as the indicator of where the genuine recovery work is actually occurring, in your inner life and in the world around you, and continue.